Thank you for joining our webinar today. I'm Bob Bradley with the Pampered Cruiser, and we're going to walk through 5 steps to choosing your European river cruise. We're going to talk today about Viking and Tauck because they're 2 very common choices for river cruises, and they offer 2 very different kinds of experiences, so they're a good contrast. Here's a photo of Sue and me at Paul Lake, where we spent a lot of time in the summer months, and I'll share a little bit more about our story in just a minute, but first I want to point out the big problem we've noticed about booking river cruises. The number one mistake I see people make when they're planning a river cruise is that they want to fly to Europe, go straight to the ship, and then fly straight home afterwards. Now, maybe in the past you could get away with that, but these days it's really risky with the real possibility of flight delays or misconnections. But that's really only part of the problem. If you go straight to the ship, it might leave later that same night, so you don't get a chance to explore your embarkation port. So, for example, if you're doing a Rhine River cruise that starts in Amsterdam, there's no time to see Anne Frank House. And the same thing happens at the other end of the cruise. If you go straight from the ship to the airport, you don't get a chance to look around a place where you disembark. So on that Rhine River cruise, you started in Amsterdam and it'll finish in Basel, Switzerland. And it's kind of a cute little place, and many people miss it because they go straight from the ship to the airport. Another reason to arrive a couple of days early is to get a head start on the jet lag, because for the first couple of days, you're probably not going to feel well if you're anything like me. And remember that river cruises are intended to be busy, so it's not like you'll have a couple of days to ease into her once you board your ship. So before we get started, let me share a little bit about us so we're not completely anonymous to you. My wife Sue and I own and run the Pampered Cruiser, and we sell just about all the cruise lines. We're an independent affiliate of Direct Travel based in Stamford, Connecticut, but we have clients in all 50 states. Our agency is part of Virtuoso, the invitation-only luxury cruise consortium, and for the past 6 years, Sue and I have been named Cruise Icons, indicating that our cruise sales place us in the top 1% of all travel advisors globally. Over the last several years, we've helped hundreds of clients plan unforgettable cruise vacations. And if you want to check out our Facebook page, we've got quite a few reviews on there. And if you want to see them, you can just go down to the Reviews tab. Okay, here's a quick agenda. Here's what we're going to talk about today. First, how to choose an itinerary for a river cruise in Europe. What's the best time of year to travel? Do you need a balcony? If you're an ocean cruiser, the answer may be different on the river because river cruises and ocean cruises are very different experiences. When's the best time to book? How to get the best value on any river cruise? And how to compare the prices between river cruise lines when the inclusions are different. And I'll give you a side-by-side comparison of 2 river cruise lines. In this case, we're going to be talking about Tauck and Viking with exact dollar figures. We chose to compare these 2 river cruise lines because Tauck is the most inclusive of the river cruise lines out there, and Viking is the one that everyone knows because they are a marketing machine. And again, we really like both these brands and we're happy to book you on either. And for that matter, there's 3 or 4 other river cruise lines that we also put our clients on as well, because everybody values different things for their vacation choices. And finally, we'll talk about how to get special perks you won't receive if you book direct, and how to get these even if you've already booked directly with one of the cruise lines. And before I get started, I'd like to point out that I'd be happy to send you a cheat sheet with a summary of all the content so that you can review it later. Just click the link below the video and enter your email address. I highly recommend doing this so you'll have a reminder of what we've covered here and you can be sure that you don't miss anything important. So go ahead and quickly pause the video and sign up down below with your email address and then come right back. Step 1, which itinerary? So here's a quick look at the main rivers in Europe. The most common rivers for first-timers is either the Rhine or the Danube River, and secondarily the Seine River in France. Here's a quick summary of each. Both the Rhine and the Danube offer a little something for everyone. There's scenic cruising, there's visits to vineyards, there's small towns, there's larger cities, and with lots of historical sites in between. On the Rhine, that's the one that goes between Amsterdam and Basel, Switzerland, you'll see things like the famous Rhine Gorge, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, where you'll see over 40 castles in the space of one afternoon during scenic sailing. You also get the urban experience of both Amsterdam and Cologne, and in both cases, your riverboat will dock right in the city center. On the scenic Danube, you'll visit charming Bavarian hamlets like Regensburg and Passau, as well as Vienna and Budapest for the urban experience. If you choose the Seine River in France, this is where you'll spend some time in Paris with the iconic Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame Cathedral, and the Palace of Versailles. Further downriver, you'll get to visit Claude Monet's home in Giverny and come face to face with the historic beaches at Normandy. All the cruise lines offer some variation of these same itineraries because they all travel along the same rivers and have access to the same towns and cities. So how do you decide which itinerary? Well, here's a surprisingly simple way that we get started with our clients to help them choose. Think about which cities and countries you've always wanted to visit. Is your family from Portugal and you've always wanted to visit your homeland? Then choose a Douro River cruise. Did your grandfather fight on the beaches at Normandy? Then you might want to choose a Seine River cruise in France. Have you always wanted to see fairy tale castles in real life? Then choose a Rhine or a Danube River cruise. If nothing specific's jumping to mind, then you can't go wrong with the more popular itineraries that I mentioned above. Step 2, who's going to be traveling with you? Many of our clients travel with their partner and maybe one or two other couples. If this is you, then all the options are on the table and you have no limitations. But what if you're traveling solo? Well, river cruising is actually a great option for solo travels. It's very social, so it's easy to join in with others. The problem is most of the time solo travelers pay the same price as two people, so you'll end up paying double. Some cruise lines have offers from time to time with discounted fares for solo travelers, so maybe they'll be charging 150% rather than 200%. So you want to keep your eyes open for those offers if you are traveling solo. Tauck, by way of example, is a little bit unusual insofar as there are no single supplements ever for their entry-level staterooms. Another important consideration is whether you're going to be traveling with children or younger people. So for example, sometimes our clients want to take a grandchild on a river cruise to celebrate a high school graduation or something like that. In this case, you'll want to keep in mind that there are age restrictions on certain cruise lines. So again, with Viking, for example, children under 18 are not allowed. And we've asked them before, there are absolutely no exceptions to this rule. So if you're taking somebody who's 18 or under, then you're going to have to go with a different cruise line. Step number 3, what type of stateroom are you going to be in? Before we start talking about cabins, let me first explain that all the river ships in Europe have an identical footprint. They're all 443 feet long, and I forget exactly how wide, and they have the same height restrictions. All the ships have to fit into the same locks. They all have to fit into the same bridges along the various rivers. So it's what each cruise line does with the ships that makes each one a little bit different. On a riverboat, how many guests are on board, how big the cabins are, whether there's a pool or a fitness center, if there's a spa and a salon, and so on. These are all the differences inside the same sized ship. To give you an idea, the same size European riverboat can carry 190 guests or as few as 120 guests. Having said that, there are 4 basic types of cabin on board all these river ships. The lead-in cabins are on the lowest deck and they're at the water level. These rooms have high fixed windows that don't open. Sometimes these rooms are called swan view rooms because when you're standing in your room, you're at eye level with the swans swimming on the river. The second type of room is a French balcony. So these rooms are usually on the second and third decks and have large floor-to-ceiling sliding glass doors that open. So you can open the window, but you just can't step out. So these rooms are really nice because they've got lots of natural light in the room. You can open the window for some fresh air if you want, or if you want to lean out and take some photos out the window. These are the cabins we often recommend to our clients because they're moderately priced and they're very comfortable. Some cruise lines, like Viking, also have cabins with step-out balconies. So there's a couple of chairs and a small table out there, so you can sit out and have a coffee or a glass of wine, which can be really nice if the weather's good, as long as your ship isn't pulled up right against another one when you're in dock, which is quite often the case when you're in Europe. The other thing you should keep in mind before you pay extra for a step-out balcony when you're on a river ship is that river cruises tend to be really busy. And our clients often report that they spend less time on their balcony than they originally thought that they might. But I did want you to know that these ones are available for you. The final category is the suite category, and all of the river cruise lines have various size and configurations of these things, some of them up to 750 square feet. Step 4, when to travel. The most popular month of the year for river cruising in Europe is September. It also tends to be the most expensive month, and for good reason. The weather tends to be very pleasant and the crowds are slightly slimmer. If you're looking to trim your costs, then the shoulder season for river cruising in Europe is March or April, and then again in November. The trade-off with going at these times of the year, of course, is less reliable weather. And one trend we're starting to see amongst the river cruise lines is that they're extending the shoulder season and traveling year-round on some of the rivers. If you choose to go in the summer, your weather is going to be most reliable. It's going to be nice and warm at that time of year, but your crowds will also be at maximum in Europe. And finally, December, if you'd like to check out the Christmas markets. This trend has picked up considerably in the past few years, and in France, Austria, Germany, the Netherlands, and Hungary, you can take a Christmas market cruise from the last week in November right through to the end of the year. So once you've decided on the itinerary and who you want to travel with, what type of cabin you want, what time of year you want to go, the next and probably the most important thing is decide how you would like to pay. Step number 5, do you want all-inclusive or would you rather pay as you go? So you can either pay a higher upfront price where everything's generally included, or would you rather pay a lower upfront price with the understanding that there's going to be fewer inclusions and then you can make decisions about the extras as you go along? So the reason I'm dwelling on this is that all the river cruise lines claim to all be fully inclusive. You'll notice the messaging is very similar, and we'll take a deeper dive into that in just a minute. The most important thing you want to look at when you're comparing river cruise lines is that you're actually getting an apples to apples comparison. One of the goals of this video is to make sure you're not taken by surprise by some of these extra costs that you might not have thought about or have known about. Let's take a look at an example. This will probably make it a little bit more clear. So in this example, we'll look at a very common river cruise itinerary, which is a 7-day cruise on the Danube River and a couple of days on either end in Prague and Budapest. Again, we'll use Tauck and Viking as examples here because they are two very common choices for river cruises and because they're at opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to inclusions. And when we run through this with our clients, people often end up becoming quite surprised when we dig into the details of this. All right, here we go. This is the Tauck Blue Danube itinerary and the Viking Romantic Danube itinerary. The numbers we've pulled are from a September 2025 sailing. In this case, we'll be comparing costs between a French balcony room. So that's going to be a category 5 on Tauck, and it's going to be a category D on Viking. Not exactly apples to apples, but as close as we can get. The big difference between these rooms is the Tauck one's 190 square feet. The Viking one's 135 square feet. But again, both French balconies with the doors that open for fresh air and lots of natural light. Published price on Tauck, $10,540. Published price on Viking, $5,400 a person. On the surface, that would appear to be a very big difference, but let's get into the details a little bit here. So here are some typical extra costs you can expect whenever you take a vacation. So first one is airport transfers. Well, Tauck includes your airport transfers, and as does Viking. As long as you're using Viking's Air and you're flying on their dates, then Viking is going to include all your transfers as well. Your beverages on board the boat, well, Tauck, everything's included all the time, including top shelf liquors. With Viking, you get beer and wine included with your meals. If you want something other than that, or you want anything outside of meal times, then you can buy what's called their Silver Spirits beverage package. The cost is $27 per person per day for that. So on a 7-night cruise, that would come to $190. Shore excursions. So this is one where the devil is definitely in the details. All the river cruise lines offer one free or included shore excursion in each port of call. However, in the case of Tauck, you're going to be given a wide variety of choices as to what that may be. And some of these included excursions and events can be really quite special. For example, in this itinerary, you'll get a private tour of Prague's famous Baroque libraries. In Vienna, everybody gets to participate in a private imperial evening at the palace in Vienna, featuring a gala dinner and Viennese performers. And in Prague, everyone gets to go to a private reception and gala dinner at the Prague Castle, hosted by a family insider. Now, over on Viking, they do offer you an included, usually it's a walking tour of wherever you happen to be on that day. And you know what? They're pretty good. It gives you an orientation as to what's going on in the local area, and you certainly know your way around. We find with a lot of our clients, because a lot of the included excursions are quite limited in scope on Viking, our clients often choose to purchase additional optional excursion to enhance their experience. So, for example, they might pay to participate in a cooking demonstration with a tasting afterwards. And they probably want to take at least one full day excursion to places like Salzburg or Český Krumlov, both of which are iconic highlights on this itinerary. Now, I bring those ones up because both those excursions would be included on Tauck. So these types of experience add up fairly quickly, but they're also a key component of your experience in Europe, and they're often worth paying extra for. So based on what our clients have told us about what they're doing, we've valued this at $1,300. So again, I'll remind you on this itinerary, you're spending 7 nights on the ship and 5 nights on land. So that's 3 in Prague and 2 in Budapest. With Tauck, the hotels are a key component of the trip and are always included in the price. And Tauck guests always stay at the best hotels and the best locations. So on Viking, when you put the pre and post on, it's going to be $2,550. This is for the premium hotels, but it's again, we're trying to get an apples to apples comparison with Tauck. Your meals on land. So again, when you're on board the ship, of course, all your meals are included in your cruise fare. When you're on land with Tauck, all your meals are included. With Viking, you're going to be out of pocket for those, and we've assessed this at $150. That's a very conservative estimate. It's probably quite likely double that if you're looking at 5 days on land for what things would cost you in Europe. Gratuities. So on Tauck, all your gratuities, whether it be on the ship or in the hotels, tour guides, all that stuff, it's all included. It's all part of the price that you pay. On Viking, we've assessed this at $270. If you want to know about the math, you've got 2 airport transfers at $10 each, $125 for your onboard crew based on $18 per person per day, $60 for local tour guides at $5 per person per day, $25 for coach drivers for those excursions, $25 for the tour director based on pre and post at $5 per day, and $25 for hotel staff. So again, don't worry too much about it. Let's just call that $270 is what you're going to put out in gratuities on the Viking package. Keep in mind, you're also going to have to be worrying about when and how to tip these people, whether you've got the right currency. Again, not all the countries use the same currency, whether you've got the right currency, whether you've got the right denomination. These are all things that it's just nice to have taken care of. So here's the bottom line, folks. So you see that the Tauck one hasn't changed much. It's still at $10,540 or $878 per day. Over on the Viking side, where we try to add in all the things that Viking does offer as extras, and when we bolt them on to try to get as close to apples as we can get, comes to $9,860 or $822 per day. So your difference is right around $50 a day. So the thing to ask yourself is that whether it's worth it for an extra $50 a day to have absolutely everything included and every detail taken care of for you. All right, let's get into some of these intangible items now. Obviously, there's fewer people on board the Tauck ship. So the Viking ships hold 190 people when fully loaded, and there's a maximum of 130 for Tauck. So this means more space for each person. So both in your private cabin area, but also in the public areas, like the lounge, where you're not going to be competing with a million others to actually find a seat. The French balcony rooms on Tauck range between 190 and 225 square feet, where you're looking at 135 square feet on Viking. There's 4 tour directors on every Tauck ship as opposed to 1 on Viking. So what this means is that you've got a ratio of 1 tour director for every 33 people instead of 1 for every 190 people. It means that the tour director is a lot more accessible to guests because they're not as run off their feet. They could become a much bigger part of your overall experience. And before we move on, I'd like to talk a little bit just about some of the things you might not have thought about with regards to the all-inclusive concept. Although it might seem the same, having the land component built right into the trip from beginning to end makes a big difference compared to having a cruise with extra hotel nights just added on. So when it's built in, it becomes one seamless experience. And when you travel with the same guest rate from the start, so everybody joins at the same time and gets to know each other. There's never a situation when you get on board the ship and feel a little bit left out because you're just joining when everybody else already knew each other already. Or maybe you're in a hotel before a river cruise and you know that there's other people from your ship on there, you just don't know who they are. So keep in mind that the cruise is really just part of the trip. You just happen to be sleeping on the ship for those few nights rather than in a hotel. Having everything included means that you don't have to be making decisions as you go along. This is especially important once your trip is underway because it allows you to be completely in the moment and enjoying the trip you've been looking forward to without getting distracted. Being all-inclusive also changes the nature of the experience and the atmosphere on board the ship. It means there's literally no being sold on board except when there's a gift shop or if you want a massage or a manicure. It also means that you can just wander into the lounge at any time of the day or night and order a drink, and nobody has to check your key card to see if you've upgraded to the beverage package. And you don't have to think about who's going to pay for the next round of drinks. There's not money changing hands, which makes it feel more like you're a guest in somebody else's home. There are also some things that are included that you might not have opted to pay extra for if you were forced to make the decision ahead of time about whether to pay. And these often turn out to be highlights of the trip. If they were optional, you might have missed out. For example, like a sparkling event. And this is like an elegant wedding. And if you've ever helped organize a wedding, even if it's not in a castle, you'll know that it's something that you could easily pay up to $500 per person before. But let's just, be conservative and let's talk about it being, say, $250 as an optional excursion. And you think, wow, that's an awful lot of extra money for a plate of food, and you might not choose to do it, but it's included, so you go. And after this spectacular experience, it's a shared experience that everybody can reminisce about together. You recall the castle, the music, the glasses, the cutlery clinking in a candlelit room. It becomes a highlight memory, one that you remember for the rest of your life. Now think about whether you would have chosen to pay an extra $500 for that experience if you had to make that decision ahead of time. Maybe and maybe not. The fact that it's included and you're glad you went anyway, absolutely. So there's a lot of information in this comparison. And remember, you can get the cheat sheet with the summary of this content. Just click the link below and enter your email address, and I'll send it to you. That way you'll be able to look over the information later without having to watch the video again. So there you have it. Those are the 5 easy steps to picking the right river cruise for you. And as I've said, there's no right or wrong answer here. We have clients who love Viking, and we have clients who love Tauck, and clients that love the other cruise lines as well. Sue and I've sailed on all the river cruise lines in Europe, and we've always had a good experience. But each of the cruise lines do offer a very different product, and the subtleties and differences between them, you need to be able to make a truly well-informed decision so that you end up on the right trip for you. Okay, now let me pass along a couple of extra helpful pieces of information for you. First, don't book directly with the cruise line. So many people assume that if they book directly with the cruise line that they're going to get the best possible price because they're cutting out the middleman. And that actually does make sense in a whole bunch of different situations, but not when it comes to cruises. You'll pay exactly the same price for a river cruise whether you work with a travel advisor or you book directly with the cruise line. Now, if you work with the right travel advisor, you'll also get additional benefits that are not available on direct bookings. We can always add something extra to your reservation above and beyond what you'd receive if you book directly with the cruise line. This might be onboard credits, it might be a special shore experience, it might be a private car and driver and a port of call. And I'll give you a couple of specific examples in just a minute. Regardless of which river cruise line you end up booking with, make sure you mention if you're a past guest with that river cruise line. If you're traveling with others and you have a group of 8 or 10 people, then often there are some very nice benefits compared to just traveling alone as a single couple. Be aware of the payment terms. Always ask what the deposit requirement is, when the balance will be due, and what happens to your money if you have to cancel. So for example, with the Tauck River Cruise, the deposit requirement is $900 per person, and the balance is due 120 days or 4 months before you leave. With AMA Waterways, the deposit requirement is $400 per person, and the final payment is due 90 days before you leave. With Viking, the deposit requirement changes every now and then, but right now, for example, it's $25 per person. So people jump at this because it seems like a small commitment, but keep in mind that your final payment with Viking is often due 12 to 18 months ahead of time. So this means Viking is going to have use of your money for a long time before you go. I don't want you to have any nasty surprises, so make sure you always ask about the payment terms because all the cruise lines are different. Also, be sure to ask if the price is protected. You need to consider what happens if the cruise line starts advertising a promotion after you've booked. So can you take advantage of that new sale price? So again, with Tauck, for example, the price advertised doesn't ever change, ever. So you can book early, secure the trip you want, and you know you won't have to worry about whether some sale pops up later on. On the other hand, on some of the other cruise lines, they're constantly running different promotions and the price can change every month. They won't necessarily protect the price for you, which means you're not automatically entitled to a lower price if one should be offered later. Now, if this should happen, we're always going to advocate on your behalf and try to get the lower price for you, but it's not guaranteed. My final advice is to book early for the best availability. River cruising is already very popular and getting more so. People book river cruises very far ahead, often a year or more out, so availability becomes an issue, especially on the most popular itineraries. The most desirable staterooms and the most popular times of year are going to be the ones that sell out first. 2025 still has some availability if you're flexible on your dates, but most of our clients are already booking into 2026. So why book with Sue and Bob? Well, the most important reason is because we actually travel. We've experienced all the major cruise lines and not just on the rivers. So whether you're looking at Viking or AMA Waterways, Uniworld, Tauck, Explorer Journeys, Oceania, Seabourn, Silversea, you name it, we can have an informed conversation with you about what it's actually like and how these cruise lines compare with each other. Second, you'll get extra perks on any of these cruise lines. Even if you've already booked direct, we can always add something to your reservation above and beyond what you would receive if you book directly with the cruise line. So on Viking, for example, when you book with us here at the Pampered Cruiser, we can always add a 100 per person onboard credit to your reservation. You can use this towards the cost of anything that you would purchase while you're on board. So this would be optional shore excursions, an upgraded drink package, individual drinks outside of mealtimes, even gratuities. This is a gift from us and a thank you for working with us, and you wouldn't receive this if you booked it directly with Viking. If you book a trip with Tauck, seeing as how we're talking a lot about them today, we can add a complimentary pre or post cruise hotel night for guests that are new to Tauck. And if you're a past Tauck guest, we'll make sure that you get this benefit as well. As I mentioned earlier, Tauck always uses the best hotels, so this benefit can be worth a lot of money. So in Amsterdam, for example, one night at the Intercontinental Amstel can be worth 500 to 700 euros, and you'll get this added as a nice little perk for working with us. Now, some of you are freaking out because you've already booked your river cruise directly with the cruise line. Don't worry, you didn't miss out. We can add these perks to your existing reservation. Please get in touch with us as soon as possible, though, because there are situations that sometimes there's a deadline involved. Probably most important, we can offer you friendly and knowledgeable advice. This is another reason to work with us as we help you consider the bigger picture. If you phoned up Viking or Tauck or any one of the other cruise lines, they're really good at selling their own product. They're usually exquisitely well trained. They know their product very well, and they'll be happy to book it for you. What they won't do is help you compare it with their competitors. They're not going to offer you a side-by-side value comparison like we went through earlier. We do business with all the cruise lines, and we're happy to book any of these for you. We want you to make the best decision for you, and that's not going to happen if you book directly with one of the river cruise lines. So now you may be wondering whether or not there's a fee to work with us. No, there's no fees to work with us, but this is a good question because many travel agents do charge fees. When you book with us here at the Pampered Cruiser, you're going to pay exactly the same as you would if you book directly with the cruise line. And as we've been talking about, we can often have extra goodies thrown in that you're not going to get on direct bookings. So if you're ready to start talking about a river cruise, we'd love to hear from you. Here's our contact information, and it's also included in the notes below. You can reach us by email, by telephone, or by using the direct contact form on our website. Give us a call when you're ready. We'd love to help you out. And don't forget to get the cheat sheet for this video. Just click the link below this video and enter your email address, and I'll send you a summary of everything that we've covered today. Thanks for watching.